The champagne flute nearly slipped from Dominic Reyes's fingers as his gaze locked across the crowded ballroom. Time seemed to slow down, the ambient chatter of Manhattan's elite fading to a distant hum. There she was, Valentina, Tina. 6 months since she'd walked out of his life, yet the sight of her still knocked the air from his lungs. The emerald silk dress hugged her curves perfectly, but something was different. His eyes widened as she turned slightly to accept a glass of water from a server. A baby bump, unmistakable. Impossible, he whispered, his voice lost in the symphony orchestra's crescendo. Dominic's mind raced through calculations. The timing, their last night together, the desperate attempt to save what was already broken. He watched as she laughed at something Marcus Chen, his chief competitor, said. Her hand instinctively rested on her stomach, a gesture so natural, so protective, a gesture he should have been beside her to witness every day. She's about 5 months along, came Serena's voice, materializing beside him. His oldest friend's expression held no sympathy. Twins, actually. Twins? The word felt foreign on his tongue. His legs threatened to buckle beneath him. You didn't know. It wasn't a question. How would I? Dominic's voice cracked. We haven't spoken since you chose to close the Tokyo merger instead of fighting for your marriage, Serena finished. Funny how a man worth $4.8 billion could be so utterly bankrupt in what actually matters. The truth hit him with physical force. Those were his children. His family. The future he'd sacrificed at the altar of his ambition without even realizing what he was giving up. I have to talk to her, he said, already moving through the crowd. Serena caught his arm. Do you even know what you're going to say? He didn't. For the first time in his meteoric rise to success, Dominic Reyes, the man who always had a strategy, always knew his next 10 moves, was completely lost. Welcome back to the Mr. Ross Story Trail, where we transform life's most powerful moments into stories that touch your heart and change how you see the world. For my new viewers joining us today, welcome to our growing family of story lovers. What you just witnessed was the exact moment billionaire CEO Dominic Reyes discovered his ex-wife was carrying his twins, children he never knew existed. A man who commanded boardrooms, controlled markets, and created technology that changed the world, completely shattered by a single glance across a charity gala. Before we continue this extraordinary journey of loss, revelation, and possible redemption, I need to ask, have you subscribed to our channel yet? That subscribe button is your ticket to weekly stories that will move you, challenge you, and sometimes even change your perspective on life. Click it now, and don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Now, let me ask you this. Have you ever achieved everything you thought you wanted, only to realize you were chasing the wrong dream all along? Have you ever had to face the consequences of putting success before love? Or wondered if a second chance is possible after you've broken someone's trust completely? Today's story asks all these questions, and the answers might surprise you. Let's return to that fateful night where Dominic's carefully constructed world collapsed around him, and the journey that would force a billionaire tech genius to confront the one problem his money couldn't solve. The story of Dominic and Valentina isn't just about wealth or power. At its core, it explores a truth we all face: what happens when we mistake success for fulfillment. Dominic built an empire valued at billions, but failed to invest in the relationship that truly enriched his life. His journey forces us to examine our own priorities. How often do we sacrifice precious moments with loved ones at the altar of achievement? How many dinners, anniversaries, and quiet evenings do we trade for one more hour at work, one more project, one more rung on the ladder? But this story also asks a more challenging question. When we've broken trust completely, is redemption possible? When someone has every reason to close the door on us forever, can we earn another chance? The path Dominic walks after that gala night isn't about grand gestures or throwing money at problems. It's about the harder work of genuine transformation, learning to see himself honestly, understanding the damage his choices caused, and rebuilding not just his relationship, but his entire value system from the ground up. As we follow their journey, we'll see that second chances aren't given. They're earned through consistent actions, painful self-reflection, and the courage to become vulnerable. We'll discover that sometimes losing everything becomes the catalyst for finding what truly matters. And perhaps most importantly, we'll learn that real wealth isn't measured in market caps or stock options, but in the depth of our connections and our capacity to grow when life humbles us completely. This is a story about a man who had everything and nothing simultaneously, and the extraordinary awakening that taught him the difference. MIT's Advanced Economics Lecture Hall wasn't where Dominic Reyes expected to find love. 20-year-old Dom was focused on one thing, leveraging his scholarship to escape his humble beginnings. Romance wasn't in his 5-year plan, but plans change when they collide with fate, or in this case, when they collide with Valentina Moretti's coffee. I am so sorry, she gasped, watching her latte spread across his pristine white shirt and meticulously organized notes. Her Italian accent thickened with embarrassment. I wasn't looking. It's fine, he said automatically, though it wasn't. That shirt had cost him 2 weeks of cafeteria wages. Their eyes met, and something shifted in the universe. Her eyes, deep amber with flecks of gold, widened with genuine remorse. Her dark curls fell forward as she frantically tried to salvage his notes with napkins. I'll rewrite them for you, she insisted. I record all the lectures. Please, it's the least I can do. Most people saw Dominic as intimidating, his intensity, his focus, his refusal to waste time on frivolities. But Valentina didn't retreat from his terseness. Instead, she handed him her scarf. For your shirt. It's silk, but better than walking around looking like a coffee shop floor. Later, he'd tell friends it was her boldness that intrigued him. In truth, it was her kindness, how naturally it came to her, how foreign it felt to receive it. They met that evening at the library. She brought perfect notes, transcribed with architectural precision. He discovered she was in the architecture program on international scholarship from Milan, with dreams of designing sustainable urban spaces. Buildings should serve communities, not just house businesses, she explained, passion illuminating her features. My father is a contractor. He taught me that what we build shapes how people live. Dominic nodded, captivated not just by her beauty, but by her vision. My algorithm models could optimize resource allocation for exactly that kind of project. They talked until security kicked them out at midnight. Their conversation flowed from economic theory to architectural innovation to childhood memories. Hers in a cramped Bronx apartment with a single mother working 3 jobs. Hers in a modest Milan home filled with noisy Sunday family dinners. Walk me home? She asked simply. That walk became their first date, followed by coffee meetings that turned into study sessions that evolved into late-night conversations about changing the world. 3 weeks later, watching her sketch building concepts in his dorm room, Dominic realized with startling clarity, this woman made him feel possibilities beyond algorithms and market predictions. She made him feel complete. You're staring, she noted without looking up from her drawing. You're beautiful when you create, he said honestly. She smiled, that smile that would sustain him through years of struggle ahead. Then I'll never stop creating. Senior year arrived with mounting pressure. While classmates applied for corporate positions, Dominic locked himself in the computer lab, refining his adaptive learning algorithm. Artificial intelligence that anticipates user needs before they know them, he explained to a skeptical professor. It will revolutionize how technology serves people. The professor shook his head. It's ambitious, Reyes, maybe too ambitious. But when he returned to their tiny off-campus apartment, a splurge they justified as investment in sanity, Tina was waiting with takeout and unwavering faith. Show me, she said, clearing space on their kitchen table covered with her architectural models. He pulled up his code while she listened intently. Though computer science wasn't her field, she asked incisive questions that often led to breakthroughs. You're thinking too linearly, she suggested one night, sketching a diagram that reimagined his data flow. What if the information moved more like water finding its path rather than following predetermined routes? That insight became the foundation of Horizon Technology's core architecture. When graduation approached, Dominic received multiple job offers with 6-figure starting salaries. Tina had opportunities at prestigious firms in New York and Europe. Take the Google position, his advisors urged. Build capital, connections, then launch your venture. One night, he found Tina on their fire escape, gazing at stars barely visible through city lights. I got offered a partner track at Bianchi Associates, she said quietly. Milan, 5-year commitment. His heart sank. That's your dream firm. She turned, moonlight highlighting her determined expression. No, my dream is building something meaningful. With you. That night, they made a pact. She would take a junior position at a New York firm, supporting them while he launched Horizon Technologies from their apartment. Every evening, she'd return from work to find him surrounded by empty coffee cups and lines of code. We need $20,000 for server space, he announced one night, desperation edging his voice. The next day, Tina sold the vintage Vespa her grandfather had gifted her. Now you have $8,000, she said. Find investors for the rest. When investors rejected his pitches, she revised his presentations. When he wanted to quit after 3 straight days of coding failures, she brought in a mattress so they could sleep in the computer lab. I believe in you, became her mantra. We're building our future. 6 months later, Dominic secured their first investment, $150,000 from a venture capitalist who saw the potential Tina had always recognized. That night, he proposed with a modest ring, promising, someday I'll replace this with something worthy of you. She shook her head, tears glistening. Don't you dare. This is perfect. It represents who we are, what we built together from nothing. They married in a civil ceremony with 4 guests present. No honeymoon, they couldn't afford the time away from the fledgling company. Instead, they celebrated by ordering actual furniture for their apartment. Our first corporate expense account purchase, Tina joked, as they assembled a real desk to replace their door on milk crate setup. Those early years tested everything. 18-hour workdays became normal. They converted half their living space into Horizon's first office with 3 eager engineers crowded around their dining table. When their first major client threatened to pull out, Tina stayed up all night helping Dominic rework the entire interface. This design feels cold, she noted, examining the user experience. Technology should feel like a natural extension of human intention, make it intuitive like breathing. That insight transformed their product. The client not only stayed but doubled their contract. At 27, Dominic secured their series of funding, $2.8 million that allowed them to lease actual office space. The night they moved operations out of their apartment, they celebrated with champagne on their empty floor. "We need to hire a proper design team," he said, watching her rearrange furniture for optimal workflow. "I know," she replied, though they both recognized what it meant, the company growing beyond just the 2 of them. Tina continued at her architecture firm, rising quickly through ranks while supporting Horizon's aesthetic vision. Their partnership seemed perfect as technical brilliance paired with her human-centered design philosophy. When Horizon launched its adaptive learning platform 3 years into their marriage, the technology world took notice. Dominic found himself on the cover of tech magazines, labeled the prophet of predictive computing. Success accelerated exponentially. At 30, Dominic closed a deal that valued Horizon at $100 million. They finally moved from their starter apartment to a Chelsea loft that Tina redesigned herself. "We should take a vacation," she suggested after the move. 2 weeks, somewhere without Wi-Fi. After the next product launch, he promised. "This is our moment, Tina. We can't slow down now." She nodded, understanding the momentum. She'd always understood. For their 5th anniversary, he surprised her with architectural studio space, a converted warehouse where she could pursue independent projects while maintaining her role at her firm. "Your creativity deserves room to breathe," he said, leading her through the sunlit space. She kissed him deeply. "This is perfect." What neither acknowledged was how their dinners together had decreased from nightly to weekly. How Dominic now traveled constantly while Tina maintained their home base. How success was slowly creating separate lives. The warning signs were there in small moments. Dominic missing Tina's first major project unveiling because of an emergency investor meeting. Tina attending Horizon's milestone celebrations felt increasingly like a guest, rather than co-creator. "We're just in the growth phase," they told each other. "Things will settle soon." But as Horizon's valuation climbed past $500 million, their moments together grew scarcer. The foundation they'd built with late-night conversations and unwavering support began developing hairline fractures. They were still partners, but increasingly in name rather than practice. The empire they dreamed of building together was rising magnificently, but the cost remained uncalculated. The day Horizon Technologies went public marked a seismic shift. The IPO exceeded every projection, closing at triple the opening value. Overnight, Dominic's net worth surged past $1.2 billion. The scrappy startup born in a cramped apartment had transformed into a tech giant with 16 global offices and over 3,000 employees. "Mr. Reyes, how does it feel to be America's newest tech billionaire?" reporters shouted as he exited the stock exchange. "It feels like we're just getting started," he answered with practiced confidence. The we had become corporate, no longer the intimate partnership of Dominic and Valentina. Horizon's adaptive learning technology expanded beyond consumer applications into healthcare, finance, and defense. The algorithm that once helped users organize their digital lives now assisted surgeons in operating rooms and guided military logistics. "Our 5-year expansion plan just became our 1-year mandate," Dominic announced to his executive team. "We need to scale operations immediately." Scaling meant constant travel. Seoul 1 week, London the next, then Silicon Valley, Tokyo, Dubai. The company jet became Dominic's second home, his life measured in time zones and deal closings. At 32, he acquired their largest competitor for $600 million in a move Business Insider called the tech equivalent of a chess grandmaster's killing stroke. Fortune featured him with the headline, "The Oracle of AI, How Dominic Reyes Predicted, Then Created, the Future." His days became a blur of strategic meetings, his calendar managed by an expanding team of assistants instructed to maximize every minute. Sleep was a luxury, meals were working affairs, relaxation meant answering emails poolside at exclusive resorts rather than in the office. "We've revolutionized how people interact with technology," he stated during his TED Talk, which garnered 12 million views. But that was just phase 1. Horizon isn't just building products, we're architecting the future. The irony that he'd used his wife's profession as metaphor while she sat in the audience they'd flown her in for went unnoticed. When Horizon's market cap crossed $3 billion on their 7th launch anniversary, Dominic hosted a celebration at their headquarters, a gleaming 50-story tower in downtown Manhattan. 800 employees and industry elites attended. An A-list performer gave a private concert. The champagne alone cost more than their first year's operating budget. Standing on stage, bathed in applause, Dominic experienced a moment of profound satisfaction. He had fulfilled the promise of that brilliant algorithm born in an MIT computer lab. He had proven every doubter wrong. What he didn't fully register was that Tina had left the celebration early, alone. "I'll be home by 7," became Dominic's most frequent text message. By year 7 of their marriage, both knew it was usually a lie. The shift happened gradually, emergency board meetings extending past midnight, sudden flights to salvage overseas partnerships, investor dinners that couldn't be rescheduled. Their anniversary trip to Bali, planned 6 months in advance, was postponed when acquisition talks heated up with a German AI startup.
"This is time-sensitive, Tina."
"The window closes in 48 hours, he explained, already packing his briefcase instead of their suitcases. "It's always time-sensitive," she responded quietly. "There's always another deal, another crisis, another opportunity that can't wait. That's business at this level. You know that." "What I know is we haven't had dinner together in 3 weeks." He paused, genuinely surprised. Has it been that long? It had been longer, actually. Their conversation shortened, focusing on logistics rather than dreams. Physical intimacy became scheduled rather than spontaneous, brief connections between his meetings and her deadlines. On Christmas Eve, when Tina's parents visited from Milan, Dominic spent 4 hours on emergency conference calls. He joined them for dessert, apologizing profusely while checking his phone. "My son-in-law, the ghost," her father joked, but his eyes reflected concern. Later that night, Tina confronted him. "My parents flew 8,000 miles to see us. The Singapore deal was collapsing. What was I supposed to do?" "Delegate. That's why you have executives. Some things require my personal attention." She looked at him sadly. "And what about us? Do we require your personal attention too?" He mistook her withdrawal for understanding. When she stopped asking about his day, he attributed it to respect for his privacy. When she ceased sharing her own challenges, he considered it maturity rather than resignation. On Tina's 33rd birthday, Dominic arranged a private museum tour, followed by dinner at an exclusive restaurant. He arrived 90 minutes late, having been detained by an unexpected meeting with potential Middle Eastern investors. "They flew in unexpectedly," he explained, sliding into his seat. "The opportunity. Couldn't wait," she finished. "I understand." But her eyes, those expressive amber eyes that once looked at him with unwavering faith, now reflected something closer to acceptance of an immutable fact. She had become secondary. The pattern repeated with escalating frequency. The fertility consultation missed because of quarterly projections. The house hunting weekend was canceled for an emergency product fix. The calls that went to voicemail because he was in do not disturb mode during critical negotiations. Each incident came with thoughtful apologies. Extravagant gifts appeared as material consolation. Designer jewelry, rare first editions of her favorite books, surprise weekend getaways. "You can't solve relationship problems with your black card," she finally said after he sent an entire garden's worth of flowers following another broken commitment. "I'm building this for us," became his standard defense. "For our future?" "What future?" she asked. "The one we keep postponing until you've achieved enough?" The question lingered between them, unanswered. While Dominic expanded his empire, Tina quietly built her own professional identity. Her talent for blending aesthetics with functionality gained recognition in architectural circles. By 30, she had been promoted to senior architect at her firm, managing high-profile sustainable development projects. Valentina doesn't just design buildings. She creates experiences that honor both people and planet, wrote Architecture Today in a feature on emerging talents. Her Milan heritage influenced her approach, spaces that encouraged community, materials that respected tradition while embracing innovation. Where Dominic created digital ecosystems, Tina crafted physical ones. The distance growing between them paradoxically accelerated her career. Evenings once spent supporting Dominic's vision became hours devoted to her own designs. Weekends alone transformed into immersive work sessions at her studio. "Your wife is becoming quite the rising star," Gregory Williams, a prominent developer, mentioned to Dominic at a charity function. "Her concept for our Hudson project was revolutionary, completely transformed our thinking." Dominic nodded, realizing he knew nothing about this project. When had she stopped sharing her professional triumphs with him? Tina's independence manifested beyond her career. She cultivated friendships outside their diminishing shared circle. She joined a community garden project, She traveled to industry conferences alone, Milan, Barcelona, Copenhagen, returning with experiences Dominic heard about in passing, if at all. When she received the Emerging Visionary Award from the American Sustainable Architecture Council, Dominic learned about it from his assistant, who included it in his weekly cultural briefing. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, calling from London. "I mentioned it twice," she answered. "Once at breakfast 3 weeks ago, and again in a text last Monday." He checked her message thread and found it buried among logistics exchanges and rescheduled dinner notifications. Dominic flew back for the ceremony, arriving minutes before she accepted the award. He watched from the back as she thanked mentors, colleagues, and friends. His name appeared in a brief acknowledgement of family support. "Proud of you," he said afterward, genuinely meaning it. "Thank you," she replied with a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes, the kind reserved for casual acquaintances rather than life partners. Later that year, when offered partnership at her firm, Tina instead made the bold move to launch her own boutique practice focusing on sustainable urban renewal projects. "Are you sure that's wise?" Dominic questioned. "Partnership offers security. Enough visions," she responded. "It's time I fully committed." He recognized her words echoes of conversations from their early days when roles were reversed. Her decision both impressed and unsettled him. The passionate Italian student who had once organized her life around their shared dream now charted her course with confident independence. Tina's studio quickly gained recognition for transforming neglected urban spaces into vibrant community hubs, a children's library in Queens, a vertical garden housing project in the Bronx, a repurposed factory becoming mixed-income apartments with integrated workspaces. She no longer needed his guidance or connections. The asymmetry that had defined their recent years, his soaring success alongside her supportive role, had evolved into parallel lives of achievement with increasingly limited intersection. The signs of their disintegrating connection appeared long before either acknowledged them openly. They manifested in small moments that accumulated like tiny fractures in foundation, concrete and visible until the structure begins to fail. Their home transformed from shared space to temporary accommodation. Dominic treated it as a high-end hotel, arriving late, departing early, leaving evidence of his presence in half-empty coffee cups and briefcases temporarily abandoned. Physical intimacy dwindled from passionate to perfunctory to rare. What began as understanding evolved into resignation and eventually settled into unspoken mutual acceptance of a primarily platonic arrangement. The guest bedroom gradually became Dominic's default sleeping quarters. "I don't want to wake you when I come in late," he explained the first time. Soon, neither mentioned the separate sleeping arrangement that became their norm. Their communication patterns revealed the deepening disconnect. Once profound conversations reduced to practical coordination. "The housekeeper needs the security code updated. I'll be in Tokyo until Thursday. Can you approve the landscaper's estimate?" Even arguments, those passionate conflicts that once cleared the air, faded into cool civility. Fighting requires engagement. They had moved past that into parallel monologues. Friends noticed, but remained diplomatic. "How's Tina?" colleagues would ask Dominic. "Dominic is still working crazy hours?" Tina's friends would inquire. Both answered with practiced deflection. The clearest warning came during a rare weekend together at their Hamptons property. Sitting on the deck watching sunset, Dominic reached for Tina's hand, a gesture once automatic. She didn't pull away, but her hand remained passive in his. When he looked at her, she was gazing at the horizon, physically present but emotionally elsewhere. "Are you happy?" he asked suddenly. The question hung between them. She considered it with the thoughtfulness he'd always admired. "I'm fulfilled professionally," she finally answered. "I'm healthy. I'm fortunate in many ways." "That's not what I asked." She turned to him, her expression gentle but resolute. "No, it's not what you asked." Neither pursued the conversation further, a mutual retreat from territory too threatening to explore. Their most telling moment came during a rare shared breakfast. Dominic mentioned a potential London expansion that would require extensive travel. "I was thinking you might join me," he suggested. "You could explore possibilities for your firm internationally." Tina stirred her coffee methodically. "I have commitments here. You could manage remotely for a few weeks, like you've been doing for years." The question contained no venom, just observation. "That's different." "Yes," she agreed. "It is." In that simple exchange lay the fundamental truth both avoided confronting. Somewhere along their journey, Dominic had classified his ambitions as primary, Tina's as secondary. The partnership of equals had tilted irrevocably. The most dangerous warning signs were the ones Dominic rationalized. Tina declining invitations to Horizon events she once eagerly attended, separate vacations becoming their preference rather than necessity. The disappearance of "I love you" from their daily vocabulary. photos of them together becoming increasingly rare on their walls. Each signal passed unmarked, each opportunity for correction missed, as they maintained the external appearance of success while their foundation continued eroding beneath the surface. Their 10th wedding anniversary arrived on a crisp autumn day. Despite their growing distance, Tina spent weeks planning a meaningful celebration. Not extravagant, they'd both grown weary of extravagance, but intentional. She reserved the private dining room at Fiore, the small Italian restaurant where they'd celebrated their engagement. She arranged for Chef Marco to recreate their engagement menu. She placed Dominic's gift, a rare first-edition book on economic theory he'd mentioned wanting years ago, beside his plate. She wore the burgundy dress he once said made her look like an Italian film star. At 7 p.m., she arrived. At 7:30, she ordered wine. At 8:15, she texted him. Dominic's response came at 8:42. Crisis with Australian acquisition. Legal complications. Start without me. 1 hour tops. She didn't reply. Instead, she sat alone, watching other couples laugh and celebrate while she sipped her second glass of wine. The book remained wrapped beside the empty chair. At 9:50, her phone buzzed again. Negotiations still ongoing. Critical situation. Don't wait up. Tina placed cash on the table, enough to cover the untouched anniversary dinner, and walked out. At home, she removed her dress, wiped off her makeup, and placed the gift in her closet. Then she did something she'd never done before. She deactivated notifications from her husband. Dominic arrived home at 3:17 a.m., still buzzing with adrenaline from salvaging the Australian deal. The house was dark. No light left on in the kitchen, no note on the counter, their usual system for late nights. He assumed Tina was asleep and headed to the guest room, not wanting to disturb her. The next morning, he found her in the kitchen, calmly drinking espresso and reviewing architectural plans. "I'm sorry about last night," he started. "The situation was—" "I'd like you to listen without speaking," Tina interrupted, her voice calm but firm. "Can you do that?" Something in her tone made him nod silently. "Yesterday was our 10th anniversary. I made reservations at Fiore. I waited almost 3 hours for you. The Australian deal was—" She held up her hand. "You promised to listen." He fell silent. "This wasn't a random dinner, Dominic. It was our anniversary. The date hasn't changed in 10 years. She took a careful breath. "What hurt wasn't just your absence. It was realizing you never intended to come." "That's not true," he protested. "Your assistant confirmed you scheduled the Australian call for 7:30 p.m. You planned a 2-hour negotiation starting exactly when our anniversary dinner began." The truth of her words hit him like a physical impact. He had known about the potential scheduling conflict 3 days earlier, but hadn't mentioned it, hoping to resolve the business matter quickly. "I thought I could handle both," he admitted. "That's exactly the problem." Her voice remained steady. "For years, I've been an afterthought when you try to fit between more important commitments. I've accepted canceled plans, cold dinners, and sleeping alone. I've made excuses to friends, family, and myself." She placed her cup in the sink with deliberate care. "Yesterday, I finally understood. Nothing will change. This is our marriage now. Me waiting for crumbs of your attention while you build an empire that serves everyone except us." "That's not fair," he said, feeling defensive heat rise. "I've given you everything, except what matters," she replied. "Your presence, your partnership, your priority." She walked past him toward the door, then paused. "I'm staying at my studio for a while. I need space to think about what I actually want in my life." As she left, Dominic stood frozen, experiencing an unfamiliar sensation, the realization that his carefully controlled world had just shifted beyond his influence. 3 weeks passed with minimal communication. Dominic threw himself into work with renewed intensity, telling himself Tina just needed time. They'd weathered rough patches before. This was temporary, a reset, not an ending. He sent thoughtful texts that received polite but distant replies. He delivered her favorite flowers to her studio. He left voicemails about mundane topics, seeking normality. When Tina finally requested a meeting at their home, Dominic felt relieved. Reconciliation was beginning. He even prepared talking points about structural changes he'd make to prioritize their relationship. She arrived looking composed in a simple gray dress, her curls pulled back in a professional style he associated with her client meetings. The distance in her eyes stopped his rehearsed opening. "Thank you for coming," he said instead. "This is still my home," she replied. "For now." They sat at opposite ends of the sofa where they'd once spent Sunday mornings reading together, shoulders touching. "I've had time to think," she began, "about us, about what we become versus what we promise to be." He nodded encouragingly. "I've been thinking too. I know I've been absent. I've taken you for granted, but I can make changes." "Dominic," she interrupted gently, "please let me finish." She reached for her bag and removed a manila folder. "I didn't make this decision lightly. I examined every possible path forward and found only one that allows us both dignity." The folder contained divorce papers. Seeing the word dissolution in crisp legal style made his stomach clench. "This isn't necessary," he said, not touching the documents. "We can fix this. Couples therapy, a sabbatical together, whatever it takes." Tina's expression held compassion but resolve. "We've been living separate lives for years. The only difference now is acknowledging it honestly." "One rough patch doesn't erase a decade," he argued. "It hasn't been one rough patch. It's been a systematic erosion of everything that made us partners." Her voice remained steady. "When did you last know what project I was working on? When did we last have a conversation that wasn't about logistics or obligations?" He opened his mouth and closed it, unable to provide specific answers. "I can't compete with your empire anymore, Dom," she said quietly, placing the papers on the coffee table between them. "I've been alone in this marriage for years." The finality in her voice terrified him more than the legal documents. This wasn't a negotiation tactic or emotional outburst. This was Valentina Moretti, the woman who never made decisions without thorough consideration, telling him their story had reached its conclusion. "I still love you," he said, his voice uncharacteristically vulnerable. Her eyes softened momentarily. "I know, and part of me will always love you. But love isn't enough when there's no relationship left to sustain it." She stood, signaling the conversation's end. "Review the papers with your attorney. I've asked for nothing beyond what I earned through my own firm. This doesn't need to be contentious." As she walked toward the door, Dominic felt himself losing grip on the one constant in his adult life. "Tina, please, don't do this." She paused, her hand on the doorknob. "I'm not doing this, Dom. It's already been done. I'm just finally acknowledging it." The sound of the door closing echoed through the house that had never felt so empty. Denial came first. Dominic left the divorce papers untouched for days, as if ignoring them might negate their existence. He channeled his emotional turmoil into 16-hour workdays, expanding into new markets with reckless determination. "You look terrible," Farah Khan, his COO, noted bluntly during their executive meeting. "Is everything all right?" "Perfect," he replied curtly. "Let's discuss European expansion." When avoidance proved ineffective, he shifted to problem-solving mode, approaching his marriage like a troubled acquisition. He consulted his attorney, who reviewed Tina's filing with surprise. "This is unusually reasonable," Maxwell commented. "No alimony requests, no claim on company shares, just a vision of joint assets and her personal property. We could push back." "No," Dominic interrupted. "I'm not fighting her requests. I'm preventing the divorce." Maxwell's expression conveyed practiced neutrality. "That may not be an option if she's determined." Dominic dismissed the warning. He'd never encountered an unsolvable problem, just challenges requiring sufficient resources and strategy. His campaign to save his marriage began methodically. He sent daily messages, not pleading but reminiscing about significant moments in their history. He cleared his schedule for therapy appointments Tina never agreed to attend. He hand-delivered architectural journals and coffee to her studio. When subtle approaches failed, he escalated. He purchased tickets to Milan, a surprise visit to her parents to enlist their support. Tina intercepted his plan through their still-connected calendar. "Please don't involve my family," she texted. "This is between us. I'm trying to save our marriage," he replied. "Shouldn't I use every resource?" Her response was gentle but firm. "Our relationship isn't a hostile takeover you can prevent with the right tactics." Still, he persisted. He presented compromise proposals with the precision of corporate term sheets, restructured work schedules, quarterly vacations, joint projects combining their professional strengths. Each offer displayed genuine intention but fundamental misunderstanding, treating symptoms rather than the disease eroding their foundation. 6 weeks after receiving the papers, Dominic made his final negotiation attempt. He arrived at her studio after hours, knowing her work patterns. He brought no gifts, no proposals, just honest vulnerability. Tina invited him in, her professional space revealing her evolution, awards he hadn't known about, project renderings showcasing her distinct vision, a thriving entity separate from his influence. "I miss who we were too," she admitted. "But that couple doesn't exist anymore. We could find them again," he suggested. "Start over." She shook her head gently. "That's the problem, Dom. You still think everything can be fixed with enough effort and resources. Some things, once broken in certain ways, create something different when reassembled. We would never be those young dreamers again. We'd be two people trying to ignore fundamental incompatibilities. So that's it? 10 years discarded?" "Not discarded," she corrected. "Completed. Our chapter together gave me strength, taught me to believe in my vision. For that, I'll always be grateful." Her calm acceptance struck Dominic as more final than any emotional scene could have. That night, he signed the divorce papers. Their divorce proceeded with the same dignity that had characterized their marriage. No leaked stories to tabloids, no vindictive asset hiding, No mutual friends forced to choose sides. They divided their lives with rational fairness that outsiders mistook for coldness. The legal proceedings concluded in an attorney's office rather than a courtroom. Tina wore a simple blue dress. Dominic chose a charcoal suit without his usual power tie. They sat beside their respective lawyers, reviewing final documents with focused attention. "Are all parties in agreement?" Judge Watkins asked, presiding over the private settlement. Both nodded. No tears, no last-minute objections, just signatures on documents that ended their legal bond. The process took 43 minutes. Afterward, they stood awkwardly in the hallway, newly minted strangers with a decade of shared history. "My firm is finalizing the purchase of a brownstone in Brooklyn," Tina mentioned. "I'll arrange movers for my remaining things next week." Dominic nodded. "Take whatever you want from the house. It was always more your creation than mine." A heavy silence filled the space between them. 10 years reduced to logistics and property division. "Be well, Dom," she finally said, extending her hand formally. He took it, feeling the familiar softness that had once been his to hold freely. "You too, Valentina?" She smiled at his use of her full name, something he'd done only in their most intimate moments. Then she turned and walked away, her confident stride carrying her toward a future he was no longer part of. That evening, Dominic wandered through their half-empty home. Tina had taken little, some artwork, books, personal mementos, but her absence echoed everywhere. The house remained filled with expensive furnishings but felt fundamentally hollow. In his home office, he found a small package on his desk with a note in Tina's distinctive handwriting. "Found this while packing. Thought you should have it." Inside was the modest engagement ring he'd given her years ago, the one she'd refused to upgrade. The simple band represented everything they'd lost: authenticity, shared struggle, prioritizing connection over acquisition. Dominic placed it in his safe beside contracts worth billions, understanding too late which held genuine value. Some separations happen in explosive moments of betrayal, but others occur slowly, a gradual drift until you find yourselves on separate shores, looking across at someone who was once your entire world. Dominic and Tina's divorce was finalized, but their story wasn't over. Sometimes the universe has ways of reconnecting paths that seem permanently diverged. Before we continue this journey, take a moment to hit that like button and share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever realized too late what truly mattered in your life? How did you handle that awakening? Subscribe now if you haven't already. The most powerful part of this story is yet to come, and you won't want to miss the moment everything changes for our billionaire who finally understands that some treasures can't be measured in dollars. Let's return to Dominic, now legally single, running an empire worth billions, yet facing the emptiest chapter of his life. 6 months have passed since the divorce finalization. Dominic poured himself into expanding Horizon's reach, as if conquering new markets might fill the void Tina left behind. The company valuation soared past $4.8 billion. Tech magazines crowned him the relentless visionary. His calendar remained perpetually full, his private jet constantly airborne. Yet for all his external success, something fundamental had shifted. The drive that once felt purposeful now seemed mechanical. Achievement without sharing it felt strangely hollow. The annual Horizon Technologies Charity Gala arrived, their flagship philanthropic event supporting tech education in underserved communities. Dominic hadn't considered that Tina might attend until his events director mentioned her. "Please reply, Ms. Moretti confirmed." "Her firm designed the community center we funded in Queens," Ella explained. "Protocol dictates an invitation." Dominic nodded, maintaining professional composure while his pulse quickened. Of course, she should be seated with the other architects. He prepared himself for the inevitable awkwardness. They hadn't spoken since the divorce, communicating only through assistants about final property matters. He rehearsed casual greetings, determined to demonstrate maturity and professionalism. What he couldn't prepare for was her transformation. The Metropolitan Museum's Grand Hall glittered with Manhattan elite in formal attire. Dominic performed his duties as host with practiced charm, navigating between investors and philanthropists with strategic precision. Then the crowd shifted, creating a momentary clearing, and he saw her. Tina stood across the room in conversation with the mayor's cultural advisor. Her dark curls were swept into an elegant updo, accentuating her neck and shoulders. The emerald silk dress she wore, a color he'd always loved on her, followed her curves before floating gracefully to the floor. But it was the subtle curve of her stomach that stopped his breath entirely. The slight roundness was unmistakable to someone who knew her body as intimately as he once had. Tina was pregnant. His champagne glass nearly slipped from suddenly numb fingers. Calculations raced through his mind with algorithmic speed. The timing, their last night together, the desperate attempt at reconciliation before she moved out permanently. He watched, frozen in place, as she laughed at something her companion said. Her hand instinctively rested on her stomach, a protective gesture so natural it suggested practice. A hand touched his elbow. "She looks wonderful, doesn't she?" Serena Williams-Chen, their longtime mutual friend and Horizon's marketing director, had materialized beside him. Her expression held no sympathy. "You knew," he stated rather than asked. "Everyone in her circle knows," Serena replied. "She's not hiding it. How far along?" His voice sounded distant to his own ears. "About 5 months. Another calculation. Definitely during their marriage. Definitely his." "There's more," Serena added, watching his face carefully. "Twins. 2 girls." The world tilted beneath his Italian leather shoes. Twins, his children, daughters he knew nothing about. Why didn't she tell me? The question escaped before he could contain it. Serena's gaze hardened. "That's a question for Tina, not me." She walked away, leaving Dominic standing alone, watching his ex-wife across a crowded room, suddenly a stranger carrying his future. Dominic navigated the remainder of the gala in a fog of shock. He delivered his prepared speech about digital equity with automatic precision while his mind raced in chaotic patterns. Several times he spotted Tina across the room, noticing how people reacted to her news with warm embraces and excited conversation. He needed confirmation. Not speculation, not second-hand information, direct certainty. Marcus Chen, Dominic's chief competitor and occasional ally, approached during the dessert course. "Reyes, an impressive event. The STEM initiative numbers look solid." Dominic nodded mechanically. "Your support is appreciated." Marcus hesitated, then added with unexpected gentleness. "I spoke with Valentina earlier. She seems well. The pregnancy suits her." Something in Marcus's tone suggested more than casual observation. Dominic's competitive instincts flared. "You've been keeping in touch? We serve on the Urban Renewal Commission together," Marcus explained. "Professional connection only. Though I admit I've always admired her vision. The implied interest, potential or actual, hit Dominic with unexpected force. The possibility of Tina building a life with someone else, raising his children with another man, created a visceral response he couldn't suppress. "Excuse me," Dominic said abruptly. He needed air, space, perspective. On the museum's terrace, he loosened his bow tie and took deep breaths of cool night air. The Manhattan skyline spread before him, a constellation of achievements and ambitions rendered suddenly meaningless. "Hiding from your own party?" He turned to find Farah Khan, his chief operating officer and longest-serving executive, watching him with characteristic directness. Taking a moment, he corrected. Farah had been with him since the early days. She'd witnessed his marriage's slow dissolution with the same analytical clarity she brought to business challenges. "You saw Valentina," she stated. "She's pregnant." "Yes," no surprise in Farah's voice. "You knew too." The realization stung, another reminder of his disconnection. "I ran into her last month at the Women in Architecture Symposium. She mentioned it when I asked how she was adjusting to single life." Farah paused. "She didn't swear me to secrecy, if that's what you're wondering." "Twins," he said, testing the word. "Girls, I heard. Congratulations are in order, I suppose." The formality of her tone reflected their new reality. The children were a biological fact, not a shared joy. "Why wouldn't she tell me?" he asked again, genuinely bewildered. Farah considered him with the unfiltered honesty that made her invaluable professionally and challenging personally. "Perhaps because during your marriage, she learned that giving you information rarely changed your behavior." The assessment landed with precision. Before he could respond, Farah continued, "What matters now is what you do with this knowledge. Will it be another metric in your life, or will it change how you allocate your most valuable resource? Which is your attention, Dominic." She straightened his bow tie with businesslike efficiency. "Your gala needs its host. Strategic decisions can wait until morning." He returned to his duties, shaking hands and discussing donation pledges while maintaining strategic distance from Tina. The calculated avoidance that had once been his speciality now felt cowardly. As the event concluded, he watched from across the grand staircase as Tina retrieved her wrap from the coat check. Their eyes met briefly across the crowd, her expression unreadable, his undoubtedly revealing too much. She gave a small, dignified nod before turning away, disappearing into the night with his unacknowledged children. The penthouse that had once seemed the perfect symbol of success now felt cavernous and cold. Dominic paced its length repeatedly, Manhattan's glittering skyline providing backdrop to his internal chaos. At 2:37 a.m., he stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows, unseeing. His reflection stared back, designer tuxedo now disheveled, the polished exterior cracking. "Twins," he whispered to the empty room. The word echoed differently with each repetition. A miracle, a responsibility, a future he'd never envisioned yet suddenly couldn't imagine living without. Sleep was impossible. Instead, his mind projected memories like film across the darkness, moments that acquired new meaning in retrospect. Their last night together before the separation became permanent. Tina had reached for him with unexpected intensity, their connection briefly rekindling amidst the dying embers of their marriage. Had she known then? Had that been goodbye or something more complex? He remembered conversations years earlier about children, hypothetical discussions always positioned safely in some undefined future. Not yet, he'd always said. After the next expansion, when things settle, when the timing is right, the timing had never been right because he'd never made it right. Like everything else in their relationship, family planning had fallen victim to his perpetual postponement. Now consequences had arrived without his planning or permission. Life had proceeded without awaiting his carefully considered timeline. Dominic moved to his home office and pulled up calendar records from 5 months earlier, the period when Tina must have discovered her pregnancy. He scanned meticulously, looking for patterns, clues, missed opportunities. There it was, 3 calls from her in 1 week, all during his critical Tokyo merger negotiations. His protocol during major deals was absolute. No interruptions except genuine emergencies, all communications filtered through his executive assistant. Had Caroline mentioned Tina's calls? He struggled to remember. That week existed in his memory as spreadsheets and contract clauses, not personal communications. He opened the safe hidden behind an abstract painting, one of the few artworks he'd selected rather than Tina. Inside lay the modest engagement ring she'd returned, still in its small box. He turned it between his fingers, remembering her refusal to upgrade it despite his repeated offers. "This represents who we are," she'd insisted. "What we built together from nothing." The irony struck him with physical force. He'd amassed billions yet lost the only partnership that had ever truly mattered. He'd optimized for growth while his actual future, his children, developed without his knowledge. Dawn broke over the city as Dominic faced a humbling truth. He had engineered breathtaking success in business by controlling every variable, anticipating every contingency. Yet his personal life had collapsed through neglect, not malice or intention, but simple failure to invest appropriate resources. The most sophisticated strategic mind in tech had committed the amateur's error, assuming what mattered would always remain available when he finally found time for it. As morning light filled the penthouse, Dominic made the first truly spontaneous decision in years. He reached for his phone and canceled every appointment for the day ahead. The Brooklyn brownstone reflected Tina perfectly, historically significant but thoroughly modernized, blending tradition with innovation. Flowering plants flanked the entrance, creating welcoming warmth despite the structure's imposing architecture. Dominic hesitated before climbing the steps. He'd arrived without warning, a deliberate choice to prevent Tina from avoiding the conversation. Now, standing at her door in morning light, he questioned the wisdom of his approach. Too late. His knock echoed with finality. Footsteps approached. The door opened to reveal Tina in casual weekend attire, loose-fitting dress, hair pulled back, face free of makeup. The pregnancy was even more evident in daylight, her body nurturing life he'd helped create then unknowingly abandoned. Surprise flickered across her features before settling into guarded neutrality. "Dominic, we need to talk," he said simply. She studied him with the assessing gaze that had once made him feel completely known. "I suspected you'd show up after last night. May I come in?" She hesitated, then stepped aside. "I don't have much time. I have a client meeting at 11. The interior revealed her distinctive aesthetic. Clean lines softened by natural elements, functionality elevated to art. Evidence of her pregnancy appeared throughout. Parenting, books stacked on the coffee table, fabric swatches for what must be nursery designs, a delivery box labeled Twin Bassinet System. They stood awkwardly in her living room, recently divorced partners facing an unexpected shared future. "You're pregnant," he stated, needing to hear the confirmation directly. "Yes," no elaboration, no emotion. "With twins, yes, my children." Her chin lifted slightly. "Biologically, yes." The qualification stung. "When were you planning to tell me?" "I was going to contact you next week, after my comprehensive anatomy scan confirmed everything was developing normally." Her hand moved protectively to her stomach. "At 20 weeks, the risk of complications decreases significantly." The clinical explanation felt like deliberate distance. "You're 5 months pregnant with my daughters, and you were waiting for a medically optimal moment to inform me?" "What would you have preferred, Dominic? A text between your meetings? A message left with Caroline during your do not disturb hours? Perhaps an item added to your quarterly personal to-do list?" The bitterness surprised him. Tina had always been the temperate one in their relationship, meeting his intensity with calm reason. "That's not fair," he countered. "Isn't it? When exactly in your carefully optimized schedule would news of your impending fatherhood have received proper attention?" The accuracy of her assessment deflated his indignation. Still, fundamental questions remained unanswered. "Why didn't you tell me when you first found out?" he asked, softening his approach. Tina sighed, gesturing toward the sofa. They sat at opposite ends, close enough for conversation, distant enough to maintain boundaries. "I did try," she said finally. 3 times. "What do you mean you tried?" Dominic asked, confusion evident. "I called you 3 times the week I found out. I was shocked, overwhelmed. Our divorce was barely finalized." Tina's composure wavered slightly. "Despite everything, you deserve to know immediately." Dominic's mind returned to the calendar records he'd examined during his sleepless night. The Tokyo merger. Early April. She nodded. "The first time, Caroline said you were in negotiations and couldn't be disturbed unless it was a business emergency. I didn't know how to categorize this situation. The memory crystallized, Caroline mentioning personal calls he'd instructed her to defer. He'd never asked for details. I called again 2 days later," Tina continued. "You were in deep work mode. The third time, I left a message asking you to call me about an important personal matter. I never got that message," he said with genuine confusion in his voice. "Caroline said she'd relay it. When you didn't respond, I made my decision." Tina's expression reflected resignation rather than anger. "It confirmed what our marriage had taught me, that your priorities were set and I wasn't among them. Why would our children fare differently?" The truth hit him like a physical impact. His carefully constructed systems for maximizing productivity had created impenetrable barriers around him, walls that had kept out the most important information of his life. "I would have responded had I known," he insisted. "Would you?" Her question held no accusation, only weary doubt. "You missed anniversaries with advance notice. You rescheduled dinners when I told you explicitly how important they were. What evidence did I have that this news would penetrate when nothing else did?" She stood, moving to the window. Sunlight highlighted her profile, the curve of new life evident beneath her simple dress. "I made a choice to proceed independently," she continued. "These girls are my miracle, my future. I don't regret my decision. They're my daughters, too," Dominic said, his voice low with emotion he rarely permitted himself. Tina turned to face him. "Biologically, yes. But fatherhood isn't determined by DNA, Dominic. It's demonstrated through presence, attention, and care." She paused. "All qualities of our marriage suggest you reserve primarily for Horizon Technologies." The assessment landed with devastating accuracy. He had no counter-argument, no evidence to refute her conclusion. His track record spoke for itself. "What do you want from me now?" Tina asked directly. "Why are you here?" The question stripped away pretense. Why had he come? What did he expect? What right did he have to any role in these children's lives when he'd consistently demonstrated that personal relationships ranked below corporate objectives? For perhaps the first time in his adult life, Dominic Reyes spoke without strategic calculation. "I want a chance," he said simply, "not to reclaim what we had or undo my failures, but to be better, for them if not for us." Tina studied him with the architect's eye for structural integrity. "Words come easily, especially for you. Actions have been more difficult. I know." No defense, no counter-argument. "These girls will arrive in approximately 4 months," she said, professional precision entering her tone. "What exactly are you proposing?" The question hung between them, a challenge, an opportunity, a crossroads. His answer would establish the foundation for whatever came next. Dominic met her gaze directly. "I don't know yet. For once in my life, I don't have a fully developed strategy or 5-year projection. I just know I can't walk away, not again." Something shifted in Tina's expression. Not warmth exactly, but perhaps the first crack in her protective wall. "I need time to consider what involvement looks like," she said finally. "This pregnancy has been complicated. My focus needs to remain on their health and mine." "Of course," he agreed immediately. "Whatever you need." She walked him to the door, their conversation reaching a natural conclusion. At the threshold, she paused. "I know about the missed calls now," he said quietly. "I'm sorry I wasn't available when you needed to reach me." Tina's hand rested on the doorframe. "That's what concerns me most, Dominic. It wasn't just those 3 calls. It was hundreds of moments over years when what I needed didn't register as priority in your world." As the door closed between them, Dominic faced a truth more challenging than any business problem he'd ever solved. Algorithms could optimize efficiency, but they couldn't calculate the cost of absent love or measure the weight of missed moments. The most sophisticated mind in predictive technology had failed to anticipate the consequences of his most basic choices. The Horizon Technologies Executive Board watched in stunned silence as Dominic completed his presentation. The restructuring plan he'd outlined wasn't merely ambitious, it was revolutionary for a founder CEO of his stature. To summarize, he concluded, I'm creating a new executive leadership structure that distributes decision-making authority across our C-suite. Farrow will be elevated to president and COO with expanded operational control. I'll remain as CEO, but focus on long-term strategy rather than day-to-day management. Marcus Deerfield, their longest-serving board member, leaned forward. Dominic, while I appreciate your thoroughness, this represents a dramatic shift in your management approach. What prompted such a comprehensive overhaul? Dominic met the question directly. Personal circumstances have changed. I need to reallocate my time without compromising Horizon's trajectory. The room temperature seemed to drop. These seasoned executives had witnessed Dominic's relentless work ethic for over a decade. His famous 80-hour weeks, his hands-on involvement in every major decision. His sudden pivot triggered immediate speculation. "Are you ill?" Patricia Winters asked bluntly. "I'm perfectly healthy," Dominic assured them, "but I'm going to become a father. Twins. They arrive in approximately 4 months." The revelation brought momentary silence before eruption of congratulations, tentative at first, then warming as the news sank in. Farrakhan, who'd been briefed privately before the meeting, guided the conversation back to business. "The restructuring plan is sound. Dominic has built redundancies into the transition to ensure zero disruption to operations or investor confidence." Dominic nodded appreciation for her support. "I've spent 10 years building systems that ultimately didn't require my constant presence. I just couldn't see it because micromanagement became my comfort zone." After addressing additional questions, the board approved the plan with surprising unanimity. As members filed out, Marcus lingered. "Parenthood changes everything," the older man said quietly. "I wish someone had told me that before I missed my own children's childhoods chasing quarterly results." Alone in the boardroom afterward, Dominic confronted the enormity of what he'd initiated. The corporate restructuring was merely the external manifestation of a far more profound internal reorganization, a complete reordering of priorities that had defined his adult life. The next morning, he called an all-hands meeting. Standing before Horizon's 3,200 employees, Dominic did something unprecedented. He spoke without calculating every word for optimal impact. "For years I've preached that our technology helps people live more connected lives," he told them. "Yet I failed to apply that principle to my own existence. Moving forward, Horizon will embody work-life integration at every level, starting with its leadership." He outlined policy changes, expanded parental leave, flexible scheduling, remote work options, that would have been unthinkable months earlier. "Our company revolutionized how technology adapts to human needs," he concluded. "Now we'll revolutionize how corporate culture adapts to human lives." The announcement generated immediate media speculation. Tech blogs questioned whether Dominic was stepping back permanently. Investors worried about leadership dilution. Competitors sensed potential weakness. Yet for the first time in his career, Dominic found himself unmoved by external opinions. The only evaluation that mattered was whether his transformed company would create space for him to become the father his daughters deserved. Dr. Eleanor Patel's office defied stereotypes of traditional therapy spaces. No leather couch, no muted color palette. Instead, vibrant art adorned walls in a light-filled corner office overlooking Central Park. "You seem surprised," she noted, observing Dominic's assessment of her space. "I expected something more conventional," he admitted, taking the offered seat. "People often do. I find authenticity works better than performance, in offices and in therapy." She settled into her chair. "So, Dominic Reyes, what brings a tech billionaire to my practice?" The directness appealed to him. "I need to understand why I systematically prioritized professional achievement over personal connection, and how to fundamentally change that pattern before my children are born." Dr. Patel's expression remained neutral. "Ambitious goal. Most people start with smaller targets. I don't have time for incremental progress. Transformation doesn't operate on command, even for those accustomed to controlling their environment," she observed. "But let's begin. Tell me about your relationship with time." The question caught him off guard. He'd expected to discuss his marriage, his impending fatherhood. "Time is the ultimate non-renewable resource," he answered automatically. "Every allocation decision carries opportunity cost." "Interesting that you immediately frame time in economic terms," she noted. "When did you first develop that perspective?" The sessions progressed twice weekly, each peeling back layers of conditioning Dominic had never examined. Dr. Patel proved exceptionally skilled at identifying patterns he'd normalized throughout his life. "Your mother worked 3 jobs to support you after your father left," she summarized during their 4th session. "You internalized that sacrifice as the definition of love, giving everything to provide material security." Dominic shifted uncomfortably. "That's simplistic." "Perhaps. But consider how that model influenced your marriage. You provided extraordinary financial security while withholding the one thing your mother never could give you, presence. The insight landed with surprising force. I thought I was demonstrating commitment by building our future. While missing your presence, she completed gently. Over subsequent weeks, they explored deeply rooted beliefs that had driven his relentless achievement. His father's abandonment had created a subconscious equation. Economic value determined whether someone stayed or left. His scholarship student status at elite institutions had reinforced that only exceptional performance justified his presence in privileged spaces. You've optimized your life around preventing abandonment and proving worth, Dr. Patel observed. But those strategies created the very outcome you feared. Tina left precisely because your worth-proving behaviors made genuine connection impossible. In their 8th session, Dominic arrived visibly agitated. I've been reading about childhood development. Infant brain formation depends significantly on consistent parental presence. What if I'm fundamentally incapable of providing what my daughters need? The vulnerability represented a breakthrough, concern not for his performance as father, but for his children's well-being. That worry itself indicates capacity for growth, Dr. Patel noted. The question isn't whether you can transform overnight, but whether you're willing to prioritize their needs above your established patterns. Not perfectly, but consistently. As therapy progressed, Dominic began recognizing automatic responses that had governed his interactions. Deflection through problem solving, avoidance through work immersion, connection through achievement rather than vulnerability. Success became my identity, he acknowledged in a pivotal session. Without it, I don't know who I am. That's precisely the question facing you now, Dr. Patel replied. Who are you beyond what you achieve? Who do you want to be for these children? Those answers won't come from spreadsheets or strategic planning. The most challenging aspects of therapy weren't intellectual realizations but emotional reconnections, learning to recognize feelings he'd suppressed since childhood. Grief for the marriage he'd neglected, fear of repeating generational patterns, longing for connection he'd dismissed as inefficient. Traditional therapy would take years to address these patterns, Dr. Patel acknowledged in their 12th session. But your self-awareness and determination create potential for accelerated growth. The real test will come in daily choices, choosing presence when work calls, vulnerability when control feels safer, relationship when achievement beckons. Dominic nodded, understanding the magnitude of the challenge ahead. I built an empire through relentless focus. Now I need to rebuild myself with the same determination. Dominic approached parenthood with characteristic intensity, transforming his learning process into a comprehensive project with deadlines and deliverables. What he lacked in instinct, he compensated for with methodical preparation. His home office became command central for Operation Fatherhood. Bookshelves previously filled with business texts now housed volumes on child development, twin parenting, father-daughter relationships, and early childhood education. The surprise came not in his thoroughness, but in his emotional response to the material. Reading about infant bonding and attachment theory triggered protective instincts he'd never experienced. Studies on how father involvement affected daughter's self-esteem and future relationships left him contemplating his responsibility in entirely new dimensions. When his executive assistant discovered him watching birthing videos during a canceled meeting, she merely raised an eyebrow. Research, he explained, not embarrassing for once. Of course, sir, she replied with newfound respect. Dominic enrolled in weekend parenting classes at New York Presbyterian's Family Center, finding himself the only participant arriving in a chauffeured vehicle. Initially, other expectant parents kept respectful distance from the famous billionaire in their midst. I'm just as clueless as everyone else here, he admitted during introductions, surprising himself with humility. By the 3rd class, he was participating in diaper-changing races and engaging in discussions about sleep training methods with people whose names wouldn't appear on any Fortune 500 list. Marissa, a forthright public school teacher expecting her first child, became his unexpected ally in these classes. You're overthinking again, she'd note when she saw his furrowed brow during demonstrations. Babies need love more than perfect technique. The concept challenged his optimization mindset. Some aspects of parenthood apparently couldn't be mastered through superior methodology, an unsettling realization for someone who'd built his reputation on engineered excellence. His preparation extended beyond knowledge acquisition. He hired contractors to convert a section of his penthouse into a state-of-the-art nursery, then revised plans 3 times after reading contradictory recommendations about optimal twin sleeping arrangements. He researched pediatricians with the same rigor he'd applied to hiring a chief technology officer, conducting personal interviews with top candidates until finding Dr. Abigail Chen, a no-nonsense practitioner who seemed unimpressed by his wealth and immediately addressed him as Dad rather than Mr. Reyes. Wealthy babies have the same needs as all others, she informed him during their consultation. Consistent care, appropriate boundaries, and parents who prioritize relationships over perfection. The pattern emerged across his preparatory journey, experts repeatedly emphasizing presence over performance, consistency over excellence, relationship over resources. These concepts contradicted everything that had driven his professional success. His most meaningful preparation, however, came unexpectedly. One evening, struggling to assemble a dual bassinet system despite engineering proficiency, Dominic found himself overcome by a wave of emotion so powerful he had to sit on the nursery floor. These tiny beds would hold his daughters, real people who would depend on him completely, who would form their understanding of love and security through his actions, not his achievements. The responsibility felt both terrifying and sacred. For the first time since childhood, Dominic Reyes wept openly, not from sadness, but from profound recognition of what truly mattered. The transformation from CEO to father had begun in earnest, not through strategic planning but through heart expansion. 2 weeks after their confrontation at her brownstone, Dominic requested another meeting with Tina. This time he came prepared, not with demands, but with a proposal for CO parenting structure. "I've outlined a potential involvement plan," he explained, handing her a thoughtfully designed document. "It includes prenatal support, birth participation options, and post-delivery involvement scales that increase gradually based on your comfort level." Tina accepted the folder but didn't open it. "You've created a strategic plan for parenthood. It's a starting point for discussion," he clarified. "Everything is negotiable." They sat in her sun-filled kitchen as she reviewed his proposal. Her expression remained neutral, but her body language, slight tension in her shoulders, the protective hand that occasionally moved to her stomach, revealed hesitation. "This is comprehensive," she finally said. "I want to demonstrate commitment without overstepping boundaries." She closed the folder carefully. "Dominic, I appreciate the effort, but parenthood isn't a corporate merger with defined terms and conditions. I understand that. Do you?" Her gaze held genuine questioning. "Because this document suggests you're approaching our daughters as another project to optimize." The observation stung precisely because it contained truth. Despite his intentions, he defaulted to familiar problem-solving patterns. "I'm trying," he said simply. "I know." Her voice softened slightly. "But I need more than organized intentions. These girls deserve a father who can connect emotionally, not just provide structured support. What would that look like to you?" Tina considered the question carefully. It would look like consistency without an agenda, showing up without expecting immediate results, understanding that relationship builds slowly through reliability, not through perfect performance. She returned his proposal. "I'm not ready to establish formal arrangements yet. I need evidence that your transformation extends beyond reorganizing priorities into genuinely different ways of relating." The rejection wasn't total, but it established clear boundaries. Dominic had hoped his methodical approach would demonstrate seriousness, not reinforce Tina's concerns about his emotional limitations. "What can I do?" he asked directly. "How do I show you I'm capable of change?" "That's not something I can prescribe," she replied. "Real change emerges from within, not from following external guidelines." As he prepared to leave, she added, "I have a comprehensive ultrasound next Tuesday. If you'd like to attend as an observer, you're welcome. No questions for the doctor, no decision-making input, just presence." The offer represented minimal involvement, yet Dominic recognized it as a significant opportunity. "What time?" 10:30 at Manhattan Maternal. "If you have conflicts, I understand." "I'll be there," he promised. "Nothing is more important." Her skeptical expression revealed how many similar promises had been broken throughout their marriage. This time, proving reliability would require more than words. Dominic arrived at Manhattan Maternal Associates 45 minutes early, having cleared his entire day despite 3 international partners requesting urgent meetings. He sat quietly in the waiting room, observing other expectant parents, their casual intimacy, shared excitement, and natural coordination. At precisely 10:15, Tina entered, surprise flickering across her features at finding him already waiting. "You're early," she noted. "I wanted to ensure nothing delayed me." The small gesture, prioritizing buffer time for something important to her, didn't go unnoticed. During the ultrasound, Dominic maintained his promised role as silent observer. The technician located both babies, confirming healthy development and appropriate growth. When the distinctive sounds of 2 separate heartbeats filled the room, Dominic's own heart seemed to stop momentarily. "Would you like to know the sexes?" the technician asked Tina. She glanced at Dominic before nodding. "Yes, we would." The inclusion, that simple "we," felt monumental. "Both girls as suspected," the technician confirmed. "Twin A is slightly larger, but both are developing perfectly." Afterward, they walked silently to the elevator. As they waited, Dominic spoke carefully. "Thank you for allowing me to be there. Tina nodded. You kept your agreement. Observer only. They're beautiful, he said softly. Perfect. Something in his tone, raw emotion rather than analytical assessment, caused her to study him more closely. Yes, they are. As they reached the lobby, Dominic hesitated. Would you allow me to arrange a car for you? I'm capable of getting myself home, she responded automatically. I know you're capable, he clarified. I'm not questioning your independence. I just thought you might appreciate the comfort after the appointment. The distinction, offering support without assuming inadequacy, represented subtle but important evolution in his approach. Thank you, but I have errands nearby, she declined, though her tone lacked previous defensiveness. Small interactions accumulated over subsequent weeks. When Tina mentioned casually that certain foods triggered her nausea, specialty pregnancy-safe meals began appearing at her door, not daily, which would have felt intrusive, but occasionally and thoughtfully timed. When Dominic learned she was researching childbirth classes, he forwarded information about several options without pressuring her to include him. When she eventually invited him to attend a weekend workshop for expectant parents, he rearranged a long-planned executive retreat without mentioning the conflict. The most significant trust-building moment came unexpectedly. During a severe summer thunderstorm, Tina's neighborhood lost power. Dominic learned about the outage through a news alert rather than from her directly, evidence of their still limited communication. Without announcing his intentions, he arranged for a generator to be delivered and installed at her brownstone. Rather than sending contractors alone, he arrived personally in rain-soaked clothes to oversee the installation. You didn't need to come yourself, Tina noted, watching him coordinate the setup from her covered porch. I wanted to ensure it was done correctly, he replied, rainwater dripping from his usually immaculate hair. When the power returned hours later, he prepared to leave without entering her home or expecting gratitude. Would you like some tea before you go? She offered unexpectedly. You must be cold. The invitation, small but meaningful, marked a subtle shift. He accepted without overanalyzing, following her into the kitchen where they shared quiet conversation about practical pregnancy matters. As he prepared to leave, Tina handed him a sealed envelope. What's this? He asked. Copies of the ultrasound images. I thought you might want them. The gesture, sharing these precious images when she had no obligation to do so, represented nascent trust he hadn't earned during their marriage, but was slowly building in their new reality. Each small moment built upon previous ones, not dramatic reconciliation, but incremental reconstruction of basic trust. Dominic recognized that the path to meaningful fatherhood wouldn't follow his preferred timeline of rapid transformation. It would require patient accumulation of consistent choices, each demonstrating that his daughters and their mother now occupied his center rather than his periphery. The call came at 3:17 a.m., shattering the quiet of Dominic's penthouse. He fumbled for his phone, instantly alert when he saw Tina's name on the screen. Hello? His voice is rough with sleep, but mind is immediately clear. Dominic, I'm sorry to wake you. Tina's voice sounded strained, controlled panic evident beneath her measured tone. I'm bleeding. The doctor said to go to the emergency room immediately. He was already moving, grabbing clothes. I'm on my way. Have you called an ambulance? No, I can drive. Absolutely not, he interrupted. I'm 3 minutes from your place. Stay where you are. For once, she didn't argue about maintaining independence. Please hurry. The city streets were mercifully empty at that hour. Dominic made the normally 20-minute drive in 11 minutes, adrenaline focusing his attention with razor precision. Tina waited on her front steps, a small overnight bag beside her. Her face was pale, one hand pressed against her stomach protectively. The sight of her, vulnerable, frightened, trying to maintain composure, awakened something fiercely protective in him. I've got you, he said simply, helping her into the car. At New York Presbyterian's maternal emergency department, Tina was immediately taken to an examination room. Dominic followed, expecting to be stopped or questioned about his relationship status, but her quiet "I want him with me" was sufficient for the medical staff. Dr. Isabella Martinez arrived quickly, her calm efficiency reassuring as she examined Tina and ordered an emergency ultrasound. Placental abruption, she explained afterward, her expression serious but measured. The placenta has partially separated from the uterine wall. It's affecting baby A more than baby B at this point. Are they in danger? Dominic asked, his usual analytical detachment completely absent. We need to monitor the situation closely. At 28 weeks, the babies have good survival chances if delivered early, but every additional day in utero improves their outcomes significantly. Dr. Martinez outlined the treatment plan: immediate hospitalization, complete bed rest, continuous monitoring, and steroid injections to accelerate the baby's lung development in case of premature delivery. Our goal is to reach 32 weeks minimum, she explained, but we'll take this day by day. When the doctor left to arrange her admission, Tina finally allowed her composure to crack. "I was so scared," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "When I saw the blood." Dominic took her hand without hesitation. "They're going to be fine. All three of you will be fine." "You don't know that," she challenged, medical reality outweighing comforting platitudes. "No," he admitted, "but I know you're in the best possible care, and I know these girls are fighters, like their mother." As they transferred Tina to the high-risk maternity ward, Dominic made exactly one call, to Farah Khan. "I'll be unavailable indefinitely. Family emergency. Implement continuity protocol Charlie." No further explanation. No estimated return date. For the first time in his career, Horizon Technologies would operate without his input for an unspecified period, and the world would simply have to adjust to that reality. The maternal high-risk unit became Dominic's new headquarters. He converted the small vinyl recliner beside Tina's bed into his command post, working remotely when necessary but present consistently. His security team arranged for the adjacent private room to remain vacant, providing space for him to shower and change without leaving the floor. The first 40 to 8 hours proved most critical. The monitors tracking fetal heartbeats occasionally showed concerning patterns for baby A, each episode bringing nurses rushing in, adjusting Tina's position, administering oxygen, checking vital signs. During one particularly frightening deceleration, Dominic watched doctors prepare for potential emergency delivery. The sight of the crash cart and neonatal team on standby etched itself permanently in his memory. When the crisis stabilized, Tina's hand found his, gripping with surprising strength, no words needed. By day 3, the situation had improved marginally. Tina remained on strict bed rest, allowed to sit up only for brief periods and prohibited from any exertion. The constant monitoring, medication schedule, and medical intrusions left little privacy or dignity intact. "You don't have to stay," she insisted during a rare moment alone. "This could continue for weeks. There's nowhere else I need to be," he replied, echoing words she'd once spoken to him during a product launch crisis years earlier. The recognition flickered in her eyes. "Your company is functioning perfectly well under Farah's leadership." He adjusted her water cup to be within easier reach. "Turns out I'm not as indispensable as I thought." The admission, so contrary to his previous self-concept, hung between them. Tina studied him with newfound curiosity. "That must be difficult for you to accept." "Less difficult than I expected," he answered honestly. Some priorities clarify themselves in moments like this. Their forced proximity created opportunities for conversations unlike any they'd shared during marriage. Hospital rooms at 3 a.m. strip away pretense, and the constant awareness of potential crises creates unusual honesty. They discussed names for the twins, something they hadn't previously addressed together. "I've been thinking about Sophia and Lucia," Tina shared hesitantly. "Sophia for my grandmother and Lucia for your mother." The inclusion of his family history surprised him. "You'd name one after my mother?" "She raised an extraordinary son alone under difficult circumstances," Tina said simply. "That deserves honoring." On day 5, during a severe thunderstorm that reminded them both of the generator incident, they found themselves reminiscing about early days, the tiny apartment, shared dreams, challenges overcome together. "Do you remember when the heat failed in February our second year?" Tina asked, smiling at the memory. "We coded wearing gloves and hats. You built that blanket fort around the computer equipment," Dominic recalled, "and we slept under every blanket we owned." "We were happy then," she observed, no accusation in her tone, "even with nothing." "We were," he agreed. "I lost sight of what actually created that happiness." The honesty felt foreign yet necessary, their shared crisis creating space for truth they'd avoided during calmer times. 1 week into her hospitalization, following a particularly difficult night of monitoring, Tina's carefully maintained composure finally broke completely. The 3 a.m., darkness and exhaustion stripped away her last defenses. "I'm terrified," she admitted, tears flowing freely. "Not just about the medical risks, but about everything that comes after." Dominic moved from the recliner to perch carefully on the edge of her bed. Tell me." For the first time since their separation, Tina spoke without calculated boundaries. "I planned for this journey alone because it felt safer that way. Now I'm facing the possibility of premature babies, potential complications, and I keep wondering if I've been foolishly refusing support out of pride." "It wasn't pride," he countered gently. "It was self-protection based on extensive evidence." She nodded, accepting his understanding. "But now I'm scared of both possibilities, doing this alone or accepting help that might eventually disappear." The fear beneath her words became suddenly clear. Dominic realized what had remained unspoken in all their careful negotiations about co-parenting. "You're afraid I'll approach fatherhood the way I approached our marriage," he stated, rather than asked. "That I'll be present initially, then gradually fade into occasional appearances as work reclaims priority." Her silence confirmed his accuracy. "You're afraid I'd see our daughters as another project to perfect, another achievement to unlock," he continued, echoing fears she'd never directly articulated. Tina's eyes met his vulnerability evident. "Wouldn't you? It's who you've always been. Brilliant, focused, exceptional at whatever you target for mastery. But children aren't achievements, Dom. They're relationships that require consistent presence even when it's inconvenient, boring, or doesn't yield measurable results." The assessment landed with perfect accuracy. Despite his intensive preparation and genuine intentions, Dominic recognized the legitimate basis for her concerns. "I understand why you'd think that," he acknowledged. "My track record doesn't inspire confidence. It's not about blaming you," she clarified. "You built something remarkable by prioritizing certain values. I just don't know if those values are compatible with the father our daughters need." The monitor tracking baby A's heartbeat beeped a warning, momentarily interrupting their conversation. Nurses adjusted Tina's position, checked readings, and eventually declared the situation stabilized. When they were alone again, Dominic spoke with rare humility. "I can't erase justified doubts with promises. All I can say is that losing you showed me what truly matters. These babies aren't extensions of my success. They're my second chance to be a better man." Tina studied him carefully. "I want to believe that, then let me prove it," he said simply. Not with grand gestures or perfect parenting theories, but with consistent presence. Day by day, her hand found his across the hospital blanket, the first contact she had initiated without practical necessity. "I'd like that." The following days established a new rhythm. Dominic rearranged his existence around hospital schedule, learning medical terminology, tracking medication timing, anticipating Tina's needs often before she expressed them. He attended every consultation, asking thoughtful questions, but respecting that final decisions remained Tina's. He coordinated with her architectural firm to manage ongoing projects during her absence. He created systems to reduce her stress while honoring her independence. What impressed Tina wasn't the efficiency of his support, but its nature. Unlike during their marriage, his assistance came without strategic agenda or expectation of return. He brought her favorite gelato from across town not to earn points, but simply because it might bring momentary pleasure during a difficult day. "You're different," she observed on evening 10 of her hospitalization. "I'm trying to be," he agreed, "not just in actions. Something fundamental has shifted." He considered this assessment. "I spent years optimizing for achievement because I believed success would ensure security. Now I understand that real security comes from connection, being fully present for the people who matter." Dr. Martinez's morning evaluation brought cautiously positive news. The abruption hadn't worsened, baby A's readings had stabilized, and they'd successfully reached the 29-week milestone. "Each day improves their outcomes," she reminded them. "The goal remains 32 weeks minimum." When the doctor left, Tina turned to Dominic with newfound determination. "We need to prepare for possible early delivery. The NICU team said we should be ready for potentially lengthy hospitalization for the girls." Dominic nodded, already considering logistics. "I'll arrange whatever's necessary." "We need a unified approach," she continued. "The medical team needs clear communication channels, consistent decision-making. We can't afford confusion or contradictory directions if emergency situations arise." The "we" in her statements represented significant evolution in her thinking. No longer positioning herself as sole decision-maker, she was inviting partnership during this crisis. "What are you suggesting?" he asked carefully. "A formal co-parenting agreement, effective immediately," she replied. "Legal recognition of your paternity, joint medical decision-making authority, establish protocols for hospital communication." The proposal contained practical necessity but also profound trust, allowing him an official role in their daughters' lives before birth, before he'd fully proven his transformation. "Are you certain?" he asked, understanding the significance. "No," she admitted with characteristic honesty. "But these past days have shown me you're committed to being present, not just involved. The girls deserve that commitment formalized, regardless of what happens between us personally." Dominic recognized the boundary within her offer. This wasn't reconciliation or romantic reconnection. It was a pragmatic partnership for their children's well-being. Yet it represented enormous progress from her initial resistance to his involvement. "I won't disappoint you," he promised. Or them. That afternoon, their attorneys drafted and finalized documents recognizing Dominic's paternity and establishing the initial CO parenting framework. The process that might have involved negotiation and protective clauses proceeded with surprising harmony. As Tina signed the final page, Dominic noticed the subtle relaxation in her expression, the first genuine evidence that his presence provided comfort rather than additional stress. That evening, as monitors beeped steadily and rain tapped against hospital windows, they reviewed contingency plans for various medical scenarios. The conversation flowed with complementary strengths, her intuitive understanding of emotional needs balancing his systematic approach to practical challenges. "We make a good team," he observed carefully, "when I don't let ego override partnership." Tina's smile held gentle acknowledgement of both past failures and present improvement. "We always did. That was never our problem." As she drifted toward sleep, her hand remained in his, not from fear or necessity, but from emerging trust. The connection between them had transformed, evolving from the romantic love of youth through the broken promises of success, arriving at something new, hard-earned respect based on growth rather than shared history. Their daughters would be born into complexity, but also into authentic commitment that prioritized their well-being above everything, even the proud independence that had previously kept their parents apart. The relative stability of Tina's condition ended abruptly at 2:14 a.m. on day 17 of her hospitalization. Dominic had just closed his eyes in the recliner when alarms erupted from multiple monitors. He jolted awake to find Tina grimacing in pain, her face contorted. "Something's wrong," she gasped, clutching her abdomen. The night nurse rushed in, quickly assessed the situation, and hit the emergency call button. "The babies are in distress. We need Dr. Martinez now." Medical personnel flooded the room with practiced urgency. Dr. Martinez arrived within minutes, reviewing monitor readings with focused intensity. "Complete abruption," she announced after examining Tina. "We need to deliver immediately." The calm efficiency of the medical team belied the gravity of the situation. They prepared Tina for emergency transport to the operating room while explaining the procedure. "We'll perform an emergency C-section," Dr. Martinez explained. "The NICU team is standing by for the babies." Tina's eyes found Dominic's fear evident despite her attempt at composure. 30 weeks, she whispered. "It's too early." He took her hand, projecting confidence he didn't feel. "They're fighters, like their mother." As they wheeled her toward the operating room, a nurse handed Dominic surgical scrubs. "Change quickly if you want to be present for the birth." He'd never moved faster, discarding his clothes and donning the sterile garments in record time. A surgical assistant guided him to the operating room where controlled chaos unfolded. Monitors beeping, medical staff exchanging terse instructions. Tina already draped and prepped on the table. Dr. Martinez glanced up as he entered. "Stay by her head. Don't move from that position regardless of what happens." Dominic nodded, taking his place beside Tina. A blue surgical drape blocked their view of the procedure. He leaned close to her face, one hand stroking her hair. "I'm right here," he murmured. "You're doing great." The anesthesiologist monitored Tina's vitals while Dr. Martinez worked with focused precision. The tension in the room escalated as minutes passed. "Significant bleeding," someone reported. "BP dropping." "Stay with me, Valentina," Dr. Martinez commanded. "Almost there." Dominic maintained his position, whispering encouragement while monitoring the medical team's expressions for clues. The grim concentration on their faces revealed the seriousness of the situation. "First baby coming," Dr. Martinez announced. Maybe a moment of silence, then a tiny, weak cry pierced the room, more kitten-like than human. "Baby girl, 2 pounds 8 ounces, a nurse called out. "The NICU team is taking her now." Dominic caught only a glimpse. A tiny reddish form whisked immediately to a waiting incubator where pediatric specialists began working. "Second baby," Dr. Martinez continued without pause. Significant cord compression. The second stretched agonizingly until a second cry, stronger than the first, filled the room. "Baby girl, 2 pounds 11 ounces, the nurse announced. "Good color, strong heartbeat." Relief flooded Dominic until he noticed the continued urgency around Tina. "She's hemorrhaging," Dr. Martinez stated calmly. 2 units of blood now. Push Pitocin." Tina's face had grown alarmingly pale, her grip on Dominic's hand weakening. The anesthesiologist adjusted medications while nurses moved with practiced efficiency. "Stay with us, Tina," Dominic urged, his voice steady despite his terror. "The girls need you. I need you." The medical team worked methodically to control the bleeding. Minutes that felt like hours passed before Dr. Martinez finally announced hemorrhage contained, vitals stabilizing. Only then did Dominic allow himself to exhale. In the span of 20 minutes, he had nearly lost everything that mattered. As they prepared to move Tina to recovery, Dr. Martinez approached him. "Both babies are in the NICU. They're stable but will need significant support. Your wife lost considerable blood but should recover fully with proper care." The doctor didn't correct his assumption about their relationship status, and Dominic didn't clarify. At that moment, legal definitions seemed irrelevant compared to the bond they'd just experienced. "When can she see the babies?" he asked. "Once she's stable, we'll take her to the NICU. For now, you can go meet your daughters while we finish here." Dominic hesitated, torn between staying with Tina and seeing the twins. The neonatal intensive care unit operated with hushed efficiency. Dominic followed strict scrubbing protocols before a nurse named Elaine guided him through double doors into a world of beeping monitors, incubators, and impossibly small patients. "Your daughters are here," she said, leading him to two adjacent incubators labeled Baby Reyes A and Baby Reyes B. Nothing in his extensive preparation had readied Dominic for this moment. The twins looked impossibly fragile, each smaller than his hand, their translucent skin revealing blue veins beneath. Tubes and wires connected their tiny bodies to machines monitoring every life function. "Can I?" he began, uncertain what was permitted. "You can touch them through these ports," Elaine demonstrated, opening small circular openings in the incubator sides. "Gentle pressure. They can sense your presence." With uncharacteristic hesitation, Dominic slipped his hand into the first incubator. His finger looked enormous next to his daughter's miniature form. He touched her palm with the lightest pressure, and 5 microscopic fingers reflexively curled around his fingertip. The simple gesture, this instinctive grasp, broke something open inside him. Tears he hadn't permitted himself during the medical crisis now flowed freely. "Hello, Sophia," he whispered, somehow knowing this was Baby A, the smaller twin who had faced greater distress. "I'm your dad." He moved to the second incubator, repeating the gentle touch with Lucia. Her grip seemed marginally stronger, her color slightly better. "They're fighters," Elaine assured him. 30 weekers have excellent outcomes with proper care. Dr. Abigail Chen, the pediatrician he'd selected months earlier, arrived to explain their condition. "Their lungs need support but are functioning better than expected. We're monitoring for infection, regulating temperature, and supporting nutrition through IVs until they're strong enough to attempt feeding." "What happens now?" Dominic asked, struggling to process the medical information through his emotional overwhelm. "Now we take each hour as it comes," Dr. Chen replied. "The first 72 hours are most critical. Your job is to be present, talk to them, touch them when permitted. They know your voice, your touch. That connection helps them fight." When Tina was finally wheeled into the NICU 2 hours later, still pale but conscious, Dominic watched her face transform upon seeing their daughters. Despite her physical weakness, maternal strength radiated from her expression. "They're perfect," she whispered as nurses positioned her wheelchair between the incubators. "Sophia and Lucia," Dominic confirmed, using the names they'd discussed. "Sophia is smaller but holding her own. Lucia has your determination already." Tina reached into both incubators simultaneously, one hand for each daughter. "We're here," she promised them. "Both of us are right here." The simple statement contained profound meaning. Despite their complicated relationship, despite the medical crisis and uncertain future, they stood united in commitment to these tiny lives. The NICU became their world for the next 8 weeks. Dominic and Tina established complementary schedules, ensuring one parent remained with the twins constantly while the other rested or handled necessary responsibilities. Each day brought new challenges. Sophia developed jaundice requiring phototherapy. Lucia struggled with feeding when they attempted to transition from IV nutrition. Both experienced episodes of apnea, terrifying moments when they simply stopped breathing, requiring gentle stimulation to resume. Dominic approached these challenges with the same intensity he'd once directed toward business problems, researching medical literature, consulting specialists, tracking every measurement of progress. Yet he discovered that parenting premature infants defied his usual problem-solving approach. "You can't optimize their development timeline," Dr. Chen explained gently after finding him frustrated by a setback in Sophia's weight gain. "Premature babies progress at their own pace. Your job isn't to fix or accelerate, it's to support and be present." The lesson proved difficult for someone accustomed to controlling outcomes. Dominic struggled with the helplessness of watching his daughters fight battles he couldn't manage for them. Tina, despite her physical recovery challenges, displayed natural intuition about the twins' needs. She seemed to sense when they needed stimulation versus calm, when medical intervention was necessary versus patience. "How do you know?" he asked after watching her correctly anticipate Sophia's distress before monitors detected any change. "I don't know exactly," she admitted. "I just feel connected to them. Maybe it's biological. Maybe it's just paying attention to subtle cues." Dominic observed her interactions carefully, noting how she spoke constantly to the twins, describing the world, singing Italian lullabies, creating connection through voice and touch. He began emulating her approach, feeling awkward initially, but gradually finding his own rhythm of communication. The nurses noticed his evolution. "You're getting the hang of it," Elaine commented after watching him soothe Lucia through a difficult blood draw. "They recognize your voice now. See how she calms when you speak?" Small victories sustained them through difficult days. Sophia maintained her temperature for 24 hours. Lucia successfully completed a full feeding. Both twins gained enough weight to move from incubators to open cribs. Throughout this period, Dominic and Tina functioned as a seamless team despite their undefined personal relationship. They shared information with medical precision, supported each other through exhaustion, celebrated milestones together, and presented unified decisions to the medical team. Their shared focus on the twins created a strange intimacy, not romantic but deeply connected through common purpose. They knew each other's coffee preferences, recognized signs of fatigue before they became debilitating, anticipated needs without discussion. "We're better co-parents than we were spouses," Tina observed during a rare quiet moment when both babies slept peacefully. Dominic nodded, understanding the truth in her assessment. "I'm learning what partnership actually means. It's not about dividing responsibilities. It's about multiplying support." The day the twins were finally cleared for discharge arrived with mixed emotions: joy at bringing them home, anxiety about managing without the NICU's constant support. At 8 weeks old, Sophia and Lucia had reached 5 pounds each, successfully maintaining body temperature and feeding schedules. As nurses reviewed final care instructions, Dominic noticed Tina's expression. Excitement mingled with unmistakable apprehension. "What's worrying you?" he asked quietly while the discharge paperwork was processed. "Practical logistics," she admitted. "My brownstone has stairs everywhere. Recovery from C-section while caring for 2 infants." She didn't need to elaborate. The physical challenges of her living arrangement were obvious, especially while still healing from major surgery. "Stay at the penthouse," he suggested immediately. "The nursery is ready, everything's on one level, and the staff can provide support." Tina hesitated, wariness evident. "Dominic." "Separate rooms," he clarified quickly. "No expectations beyond co-parenting. Just practical support until you're fully recovered." She considered the offer, clearly weighing independence against pragmatism. "Temporary arrangement only," she finally agreed, with clear boundaries, of course. The transition home proceeded more smoothly than anticipated. The penthouse nursery, designed months earlier with Dominic's characteristic thoroughness, accommodated the twins perfectly. The household staff adjusted to new priorities with professional efficiency. 3 weeks into this arrangement, with the twins finally establishing something resembling a schedule, Dominic found Tina in the nursery late one evening. She sat in the rocking chair between the cribs, watching their daughters sleep. He joined her quietly, taking the second chair they'd positioned for night feedings. "I still can't believe they're really here," he said softly. "That they survived, that we all did," she added. The shared experience, the medical crisis, the NICU journey, the current CO to parenting arrangement, had created connections neither had anticipated. Not rekindled romance, but something perhaps more substantial, genuine partnership based on mutual respect rather than shared history. "I need to tell you something," Dominic said after comfortable silence. "Something I've realized through all this." Tina turned toward him, her expression open but guarded. "I still love you," he confessed simply. "Not because of our daughters, but because you've always been my heart. I just forgot to listen to it." The words hung between them, honest but without expectation. "Dominic," she began, uncertainty evident. "I'm not asking for reconciliation," he clarified. "I understand too much damage occurred for simple repair. I just wanted you to know that these months have shown me what I lost through my own choices." Tina considered his words carefully. "Words aren't enough," she finally responded. "They never were our problem." "I know," he acknowledged. "Actions matter more than declarations." As Tina prepared to return to her brownstone with the twins, now healthy 2-month-olds, Dominic approached her with an unexpected proposal. "Before you decide on permanent living arrangements," he began, "I'd like to suggest an alternative." Tina's expression showed immediate wariness. "I'm not ready to discuss reconciliation, Dominic. That's not what I'm proposing," he clarified. "I'm asking for 1 year to show you the man I've become, not as your husband, but as the father of our daughters and potentially your partner." "What exactly are you suggesting?" she asked cautiously. "The Madison Avenue property," he explained. "The brownstone with the adjoining carriage house we once considered buying together. I purchased it last month." Her surprise was evident. "Why?" "It offers a solution that respects both our independence and our daughter's needs for consistent parenting," he explained. "The main house for you and the girls, the carriage house for me. Connected but separate spaces." The thoughtfulness of the arrangement struck her. It would allow constant access to both parents without forcing premature decisions about their personal relationship. "This isn't about winning you back," he continued, seeing her hesitation. "It's about creating the best environment for Sophia and Lucia while giving us time to determine what relationship makes sense for our family." 1 year, she repeated, considering the time frame. 1 year of CO parenting in proximity, he confirmed. If you still want separate lives afterward, I'll respect that forever. The property would remain yours and the girl's regardless. The proposal reflected genuine evolution in his thinking, prioritizing their daughter's needs while respecting Tina's boundaries. No pressure for romantic reconciliation, no financial leverage, just practical partnership with potential for growth. I need time to consider this, she said finally. Of course, he agreed immediately. There's no deadline. 2 weeks later, after thorough consideration and consultation with her therapist, Tina accepted the arrangement with clear terms. They would maintain separate residences within the property, share parenting responsibilities equally, and make no assumptions about their personal relationship beyond co-parenting. As they settled into this new arrangement, neither could predict how the year would unfold. They had no guarantees beyond mutual commitment to their daughter's well-being. Yet something fundamental had shifted between them, trust cautiously rebuilding, respect deepening through shared challenges, communication improving through necessity. The twins thrived under their complementary parenting styles, Dominic's protective planning balanced by Tina's intuitive responsiveness. Their daughters became the bridge between past wounds and potential future, requiring them to function as partners regardless of romantic status. One evening, as they completed the complex choreography of bathing 2 infants, Dominic caught Tina watching him with an expression he couldn't quite interpret. "What?" he asked, securing Sophia's diaper with newfound skill. "You're different with them than I expected," she admitted. "More patient, more present." "They've changed me," he acknowledged. "Or maybe they've just revealed who I always could have been if I'd understood what actually matters." The simple exchange contained no promises, no declarations, just honest recognition of growth. Their journey forward remained unwritten, but for the first time, both could envision possibilities beyond co-parenting out of obligation. Their story wasn't about a billionaire winning back his ex-wife. It was about 2 people discovering that true wealth lies in the family you build and the love you nurture every single day. The seasons marked the passage of their experimental year, each bringing moments that gradually transformed their carefully structured CO parenting arrangement into something neither had anticipated. Fall brought the twins' first smiles, Sophia's appearing during one of Dominic's late-night feedings, Lucia's following 2 days later as Tina sang an Italian lullaby. These simple milestones became shared joy, documented in photos exchanged across their adjoining homes. "Did you see that?" Dominic whispered one October evening, as Sophia tracked a colorful toy with newfound focus. "She's already analyzing patterns." Tina smiled at his wonder. Just like her father, the comment, acknowledging his positive influence rather than past failures, represented a subtle shift in her perception. Winter arrived with respiratory infections that transformed both parents into vigilant caregivers. When the pediatrician recommended humidity therapy, Dominic spent hours researching optimal solutions before installing custom humidification systems in both homes. "You didn't need to do all this," Tina noted, watching him adjust settings with meticulous attention. "I wanted to," he replied simply. The difference was evident. His thoroughness now served their daughter's well-being rather than corporate optimization. His intensity, once directed exclusively toward market dominance, found healthier expression in parental protection. 3 nights into the illness, with both babies finally sleeping, Tina found Dominic in his kitchen preparing meals for the coming day. "You should rest," she suggested, noticing the exhaustion in his posture. "I will. Just finishing these preparations so tomorrow runs smoothly." She studied him, this man who once delegated personal responsibilities to a staff of assistants now handling domestic details himself. "You've surprised me," she admitted. "How so?" "You've embraced the mundane aspects of parenting, the repetitive tasks, the disrupted sleep, the constant adjustments. I expected resistance to the disorder of it all." He considered this assessment. "I've discovered meaning in the consistency they require. There's something profound in being essential to someone in such fundamental ways." The observation revealed genuine transformation, not strategic adaptation but philosophical evolution. Spring brought developmental leaps. The twins began babbling, sitting independently, showing distinct personalities. Lucia displayed her mother's artistic tendencies, fascinated by colors and textures. Sophia exhibited her father's analytical nature, studying how objects function with intense concentration. When Dominic's mother visited from Florida, she observed their arrangement with quiet approval. "You've created something remarkable here," she told her son privately. "Not just beautiful children, but a new definition of family. We're still figuring it out," he acknowledged. "That's parenting," she replied with hard-earned wisdom. Constant adaptation to evolving needs. Summer arrived with mobility, both twins crawling, pulling up, exploring their connected homes as one environment, despite the technical separation. Their determined movements between spaces gradually erased artificial boundaries between Mama's house and Dada's house. The most revealing moment came during a thunderstorm power outage. Without discussion, they consolidated in the main house, Dominic camping in the living room, while Tina kept the twins in her bedroom. By morning, practical considerations had them preparing breakfast together, moving around each other with comfortable familiarity. "This feels natural," Tina observed as she passed him coffee. "It does," he agreed, careful not to overinterpret the moment. Throughout these seasons, Dominic maintained his transformed priorities. He restructured Horizon's leadership permanently, refusing investors' pressure to resume his former role. He declined international speaking engagements that would separate him from the twins for more than 24 hours. He attended every pediatrician appointment, developmental assessment, and parenting class. Most significantly, he supported Tina's career renaissance without attempting to manage it. When her sustainable housing design won international recognition, he arranged childcare coverage without being asked, allowing her to attend the awards ceremony in Copenhagen. "You should be proud," he told her upon her return. "You're changing how people think about urban living." The genuine admiration for her professional achievements, without connecting them to his own success or influence, demonstrated perhaps his most meaningful growth. The twins' first birthday arrived with perfect early autumn weather. Their connected garden spaces had been transformed into a modest celebration area. Balloons, small tables with sunflower centerpieces, a handmade banner reading Sophia and Lucia, 1 year of magic. No extravagance, Tina had insisted during planning, just family and close friends. Dominic had agreed without hesitation, understanding her desire for authenticity over display. The guest list included 30 people who had genuinely supported their unconventional journey. Tina's parents from Milan, Dominic's mother, carefully selected friends, and the medical team that had guided them through the twins' precarious early weeks. Sophia and Lucia, now healthy 1-year-olds who showed no evidence of their premature beginnings, wore matching yellow dresses chosen by Tina. They toddled between guests, accepting adoration with distinct personalities already evident, Sophia observant and selective with affection, Lucia openly charming everyone she encountered. Dr. Martinez embraced Tina warmly. "From emergency delivery to these beautiful, thriving girls, you've all come so far." "We have," Tina agreed, watching Dominic help Sophia balance as she practiced standing independently. In many ways, the celebration proceeded with natural joy. Children playing, adults conversing, perfect weather blessing the occasion. No elaborate entertainment, no excessive gifts, just genuine connection among people who cared for each other. As evening approached and guests departed, Dominic and Tina found themselves alone with their daughters, who were happily exhausting the last of their birthday excitement by exploring discarded wrapping paper. "Thank you," Tina said unexpectedly. "For what?" "For understanding what today should be. A year ago, you might have planned something excessive, showy, Instagram-worthy." He supplied with self-aware humor. "Yes," she admitted with a smile. "This was perfect." When the twins finally succumbed to exhaustion, they put them to bed in the main house nursery. Standing together watching their daughter sleep, Dominic recognized the moment had arrived for the conversation he'd been preparing for weeks. "Could we talk?" he asked quietly as they left the nursery. "There's something I'd like to discuss before our year officially concludes next week." Tina nodded, following him to the garden where remnants of the celebration still decorated the space. Night had fallen, garden lights illuminating the peaceful setting. "This year has been the most meaningful of my life," Dominic began carefully. "Watching Sophia and Lucia grow, participating in their daily lives, learning what actually matters. It's changed me fundamentally." Tina listened without interrupting, her expression attentive but guarded. "Our arrangement was designed as a temporary solution with evaluation at year's end," he continued. "That milestone arrives next week, and I want to be clear about my hopes going forward." He paused, gathering thoughts he'd rehearsed countless times yet still struggled to articulate perfectly. "I'm not asking to erase our past or pretend I didn't hurt you," he said finally. "I'm asking if we can build something new, something better, together." "Define together," she requested, her architect's precision seeking clear parameters. "I'm not proposing remarriage," he clarified. "I'm suggesting we continue evolving whatever this has become. This partnership that puts Sophia and Lucia at the center while allowing us to rediscover each other as the people we are now, not who we were." The distinction was crucial, not attempting to restore what had broken, but creating something entirely new from stronger materials. "And if that evolution leads nowhere romantically?" she asked directly. "Then we continue as dedicated co-parents who respect each other and communicate honestly. The property arrangement remains unchanged. The girls maintain stability." Tina studied him carefully. "You're not asking for immediate answers." "No," he confirmed. "I'm asking for continued possibilities, for permission to show you, through consistent daily choices, that my transformation isn't temporary or strategic, but fundamental rewiring of what I value." Tina's answer wasn't immediate, but when it came, it carried the certainty that had always characterized her most important decisions. 1 week after the birthday celebration, she invited Dominic to dinner in the main house after the twins were asleep. The setting was intentional, candles lit, music playing softly, effort evident in the prepared meal. "I've been thinking about your suggestion," she began as they sat across from each other, "about continuing our evolution without predefined outcomes." Dominic listened attentively, careful not to project his hopes onto her words. "This year revealed something unexpected," she continued. "Not just your capacity for change, but mine for forgiveness. Not because you earned it through perfect behavior, but because holding on to past hurt serves neither us nor our daughters." She reached across the table, offering her hand, a gesture of connection she initiated without practical necessity. "I'm not ready for romantic declarations or renewed vows," she explained. "But I am ready to acknowledge that something valuable has grown between us, something worth nurturing to see where it might lead." The measured response contained neither rejection nor false promise, just authentic willingness to continue their journey without predetermined destination. "That's more than enough," Dominic replied, genuine gratitude evident. "Whatever comes next, Sophia and Lucia will grow up seeing parents who respect each other, communicate honestly, and prioritize their well-being above everything. They'll also see a father who proved change is possible when motivation runs deeper than convenience," Tina added. "That lesson alone justifies our unconventional arrangement." As months passed, their relationship continued evolving organically. The artificial boundary between their living spaces gradually dissolved. Family dinners became nightly rather than scheduled. Bedtime routines transformed into shared responsibility rather than coordinated handoffs. When Tina's firm received commission for a major sustainable housing development, Dominic supported her ambition without attempting to influence or optimize her approach. When Horizon's board requested his increased involvement during a challenging transition, Tina encouraged his participation, while maintaining family boundaries they had established together. Their daughters flourished in an environment of consistent love and collaborative parenting. Sophia's analytical mind is balanced by Lucia's creative spirit, each developing distinct personalities while sharing unshakable security in their parents' united presence. True wealth, Dominic discovered, had nothing to do with the billions in his accounts. It existed in Sophia's determined steps toward independence and Lucia's infectious laughter. It manifested in Tina's renewed trust, granted not through dramatic gestures but through consistent daily choices that prioritized connection over acquisition. The journey from ambitious college students to successful professionals to failed spouses to effective CO parents had transformed them both in ways neither could have predicted. Their story wasn't about reclaiming lost romance, but about discovering deeper partnership through genuine growth. 2 years after the twins' dramatic arrival, Dominic and Tina stood together at the entrance to their shared garden, watching their daughters explore spring flowers with toddler enthusiasm. "We created something beautiful," Tina observed, her shoulder lightly touching his. "The girls?" Dominic asked. "Them, yes," she agreed. "But also this, what we've become together, something neither of us could have built alone." Their relationship defied conventional categories, more than CO parents but carefully evolved beyond past mistakes. Whether romance fully rekindled remained secondary to the authentic partnership they'd constructed with patience and intention. The true lesson of their journey wasn't about second chances or dramatic redemption. It was about the courage to dismantle old patterns, the humility to acknowledge failures without being defined by them, and the wisdom to build something new with a stronger foundation. Every day, we make choices that determine our path, choosing what deserves our attention, our energy, our precious time. Dominic learned through nearly losing everything that no achievement can compensate for missed connection with those who matter most. His journey reminds us that true transformation isn't about grand gestures or perfect performance. It's about consistent daily choices that gradually reshape who we become. If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button and share it with someone who might need this reminder about what actually constitutes success in life. The most valuable currency isn't found in bank accounts or business achievements. It's measured in the depth of our connections and our capacity to grow when life humbles us completely. Thank you for walking this path with Dominic and Tina. Until next time, this is Mr. Ross reminding you that our most meaningful stories are still being written, one choice at a time.